and welcome to Can I Recycle That? Super exciting episode this week. We're here every Wednesday live at noon to answer your recycling questions, bust those recycling myths. I am super excited today. We've got a compostable packaging special, and our super special guest today is Tony Small, founder and CEO of Decent Packaging. Here's Tony. Welcome.
G'day, Bruce.
How are
you doing?
I'm very good. Welcome to Can I Recycle That? This is our weekly Insta Live, and we are busting recycling myths, helping people at home, people at work, mainly people at home at the moment, in terms of how to recycle and whether things can be recycled or not. Last week we did a special on recycling labels, which was a good one, and we had quite a few questions around compostables, so we thought we'd do a special edition on recycling compostable packaging and learning all about it. So welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And why don't we kick off? Tell us about Decent Packaging, how it all came around and what's going on with you.
Yeah, well, we actually originate from New Zealand. So we started a company about 7 years ago called Innocent Packaging in New Zealand. And that was out of, I guess, long story short, out of a desire to simplify sustainability. We, prior to that, actually had a reusable coffee cup company. And while I admire reusable coffee cups and think they're definitely part of the solution, I found that a lot of our customers had stopped using them after about 3 months. And so we wanted to simplify that process. How do we make it easy for people to be able to have their coffee, enjoy their food, enjoy their takeaway food, and still have a very minimal or even no impact at all? And that's how we started.
Excellent, good stuff. And I think I was reading your bio, you used to be a sailor, or you were sailing somewhere and saw all this plastic bobbing around the ocean, and that's what got you into it in the first place, which is sort of, you were probably ahead of the curve with that.
Yeah, about 10 years ago I was sailing in the south of France. Very fortunate to live there for a while and get to sail in the Mids, and and was just reading about how much plastic was ending up in the ocean and how 52 billion coffee cups were ending up in landfill at the time.
Yeah.
So quite shocking stats that I was learning about.
That's really interesting you're in the Med as well, because I think last week some scientists published some information saying that they found the highest concentrations of ocean floor microplastics actually in the Mediterranean. So there's been lots of publicity around the Pacific garbage patch, but actually, much closer to the UK is the Med, which is an enclosed ocean sea, and there's a lot of plastic going into there. So great that you, good and bad, that it all emerged from the lovely Mediterranean. So good stuff. So how's it going in lockdown? How are you coping? I'm sure there's some highs and lows.
Yeah, I think like most, right? It's been a real roller coaster, for me personally and for us as a business. There's days when you just feel amazing, and then there's days when you experience some anxiety and concern and worry. And, I think, we're all doing our best just to get through, and we're fortunate to have a great team and amazing customers that are helping us through this. So, much the same, I imagine, as everyone else, having a few challenges, but getting through it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that as coffee shops and restaurants start to reopen on a takeaway basis, that's going to be good for your business, because people are looking for sustainable food-to-go packaging. Is that something that's sort of a positive?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have seen a bit of an upswing in the past sort of fortnights of people sort of reopening again, and we're ready to go. We haven't shut down, so we are here and ready to help where we can, and hopefully guide people and if we can recommend ways, not just about supplying them with sustainable packaging, but possibly saving them money as well, because that is obviously part of running a sustainable business. So tying
Great.
it all in.
Excellent, good to hear that we're sort of hopefully back on the road to recovery. We're gonna go straight to a question, and I'm privileged here because I'm running the call, so it's going to be my question first. And
Sure.
we're a recycling business, and we get asked all the time about compostables and various other materials and how you can recycle it. But the first thing I say to people when we talk about compostables is actually what you need to look at is the carbon impact and the impact of producing a compostable piece of packaging in the first place before you look at the recyclability of it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about recycling a lot in a second. So can you just tell us, because this is sometimes forgotten with compostables, that the great thing is they're not made out of petrol and they're not made out of oil, they're made out of natural products. But is it lower impact using compostables?
It is a lower impact, and it's definitely a big part of what we do is that manufacturing process. So it's not just about, having your coffee and getting it to the correct waste stream. It's about how do we create products that have a lower impact in manufacturing as well. So by using plants and by using, plant starch and plant sugars, we're using products that have reduced carbon as they grow, and then we've taken them to manufacture products that have a very low impact life. And so, our carbon reduction in manufacturing reduces by about 75% compared to a PE or oil-based coffee cup. Yeah.
And what's your number one best-selling piece of compostable packaging before we all went into lockdown?
I think it's still the coffee cup for us. That's always been the biggest. I'm a big coffee lover, and that's where we started, and we love working with that industry. So it's where we really focus as well. Our attention.
And so, could you run us through what's the difference between a compostable coffee cup and a regular sort of coffee cup? How does it work? What's the difference?
Well, the big challenge has always been that we've made disposable cups out of paper, and then we've had to line them to stop them from leaking. So we line them with a product we don't, but for 50 years we've lined them with a product called PE, what's plastic or oil-based plastics. And to separate those two materials is really challenging. And that's one of the big reasons that they haven't been recycled for a very long time. So we use FFC paper, and then we line it with PLA, what's polylactic acid, and that's essentially derived from plant sugar. And then we print them with water-based inks. And so the whole cup, including the lid, is essentially one material. Instead of having 2 or 3 materials in a coffee cup, you've got one material that you can put in one waste stream.
And so let's get straight to PLA then, because there's lots of different compostable materials. But we're on to the subject of PLA. We had a few questions on PLA already.
Yes.
I'm just going to get something cleared up first, because somebody asked about is PLA plus compostable? I haven't come across PLA plus, I have to admit, before. Have you come across that polymer, or is it? I've just thought it was PLA.
No, same here. No, I haven't. I'd have to do some research. Haven't heard of it. So.
If anyone's listening and have heard of the PLA plus derivative of PLA, let us know. But I'm assuming it's just PLA. Is PLA compostable? How does that work?
Yeah, it is. And look, all of our products are certified. So you can't just claim that something's compostable. You have to go through a process, and so all of our products are certified to be compostable. But the great thing about PLA is it breaks down into carbon, nitrogen, and organic matter. So you're creating a product essentially from plant sugar. You're using it for a short period of time for packaging, and then it can break down with heat. And so that's how it breaks down in compost. At 60 degrees, it will start to decompose.
And the other nice fact, I always remind people of PLA because it's used for packaging a lot, and it's effectively a polymer that's made out of lactic acid, which is derived from plant-based material, which is not oil, which is super good. But because it breaks down organically, it's often used for medical devices that after surgery are left in the body, screws and pins that actually degrade down and just break down into harmless lactic acid after 6 months to 2 years. So it's an amazing material. And so next time you're drinking your coffee from a compostable cup, you can maybe think about the medical applications there as well, which is super cool. And you can eat the cup as well, I guess, theoretically. Wouldn't recommend it.
No, I wouldn't eat it. No.
So we've actually got a question coming in. I'm just reading now live. Similar thing, really. I mean, is decent packaging 100% compostable? And maybe we'll answer that one around where, can it get composted at home, or can it get composted in council schemes? And maybe that sort of, I think you've answered yes, it's 100% compostable, but what's the processes and the streams for that?
Yeah, so we only produce compostable packaging. So whether it's our coffee cups or our takeaway clamshells, noodle boxes, it's all compostable. Can you compost compostable packaging at home is probably the biggest question we get asked, and it's a really good question. In short, you can. So how compost breaks down is it's all heat based. So if you know how to get your compost to about 60 degrees, then it will naturally start to degrade. Where you'll have a problem or a challenge is when your compost heat isn't that hot. So if it's only at sort of 30, 40 degrees, it's not going to start to break down, or it will just take a lot longer. So yeah, we've seen really, really good results at home on farms where it's a very natural process.
Yeah. Which is great. And then I think we'll just pop into a quick labeling thing here, and I've got some very high-tech screen sharing going on here. So if I get my camera and move it around, then we've got the two labels in here, which I can't really see what's going on there. So there we go. We've got the two labels there, which is the bottom one is home composting, and the top one is compostable, I think, in a sort of industrial composting procedure. So if anyone is in any doubt at home, those are the composting labels, unless I've got those the wrong way around. Is that the right way around, Tony?
No, that's right. Yeah, you got that right.
Okay. I was upside down as well as the phone, so I wasn't quite sure where that's right. We have a good one coming in now from Simply by George. Thanks for the question on the live feed. And Simply by George is asking if you are supplying any of the major chains, or you sort of tend to be working with the indies. Are the big boys buying compostables?
We have had a chat to a few of the big boys, both in the UK and in New Zealand, some of the big burger chains. So they are heading in that direction. Currently not using our products, but mostly independent. So we supply the likes of Crosstown Donuts and mostly independent cafes or roasteries that at the moment. But look, it's interesting. They are definitely testing compostables and so forth. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what they decide to do.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're running sort of a hashtag at the moment on everything, which is all about come back greener, and we're hoping that we're going to leapfrog some of these sort of old traditional sort of sugar hit petrochemical historic ways and get into a greener, more sustainable future as we go forward.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity coming out of this for many changes, right? Whether it's more sustainable packaging, recycling, or travel, getting to work at different times. I think everyone's just adjusted so well and so fast to working from home, and that could have huge impact on carbon emissions. So hopefully we embrace that.
Yeah, absolutely. Got another one coming in now. So actually, Simply by George said, that's amazing. So some great feedback. Very impressed with what you're doing there, Tony. So that's fantastic. I've actually got a question here, so you can have a break, which is, should you remove the paper from tin cans before putting them in the recycling bin? If you're feeling super diligent, yes, you can, but you absolutely don't need to. Tin cans have often got paint on them if it's a Coca-Cola can, or they might have a paper label. As part of the smelting process, that material is burnt off and it sort of regenerates into heat. There's emission controls, so none of that bad emissions off any paint or paper will go into the atmosphere. So it absolutely can be left on. It comes off. Metal is resmelted at very high temperature, so leaving labels on and the paint on cans is absolutely no problem. So that's an easy one. We've got one here for you, Tony, which is great. So if you live in a flat, and I'm sure there's lots of people at home working at home, locked down in flats at the moment, what are your options for composting waste? Have you come across any in-flat compost bins?
It depends on your borough or where you live. It can vary. So hopefully there's an option for you to be able to compost your food. That's a great start. Depending on where you are in London, a number of the cafes that we supply now have a full package bin, what's obviously tied in with First Mile. And you can take your coffee cup down there, or even your compostable packaging down there, and they'll make sure it's composted on your behalf. So hopefully there's a food solution, and then try and find a local cafe that has a collection, and you might be able to take your cup back there.
Yeah, perfect. And then also check your council. I think you said that. So check the council collection scheme at the moment. The council recycling and food waste recycling streams seem to be slightly up in the air at the moment with sort of coronavirus. So if they're not recycling food at the moment and composting food at the moment, they may well in the future. So don't give up hope just because we're in this sort of time of turbulence at the moment. And definitely check out your local indie, who lots of them are using the First Mile service for compostable packaging. I think just another one coming in, following up on it's not strictly a recycling question, but I'm going to go for it anyway. It's a wider environmental question, but is price affecting the big companies from committing to compostables? That's on the assumption that compostables is more expensive. So maybe you can answer, is compostable more expensive at the moment? And is that a barrier for the big chains?
It is a bit more expensive, yes. Not hugely. There's going to be a few p difference in a cup. So for those chains that have those volumes, I would imagine that they could probably get pretty close. I imagine changing from plastic straws to paper, there was probably a cost increase for some of those chains. So there will be, but it wouldn't be significant. I guess over their volumes, it could add up definitely. But look, so at the end of the day, there's a cost no matter which way you look at it, whether it's an upfront cost of doing something more sustainable, or that later cost of obviously landfill or incineration long term. What is a cost as well.
And I think it's the classic with all sort of environmental new technologies. It's a bit like people saying electric cars are more expensive, and they are because there's not many people making them and the technology is new. And PLA, for example, there's many more compostables, but PLA, which is a key component to many compostables, it's not a commoditized polymer yet, and it's made on a commercial scale, but it's not made on a global scale. And as a result, the price hasn't come down yet in terms of its because it's not being used that more. But maybe if some of the bigger chains committed, then the price of the compostables will definitely come down. So hopefully we'll see movement in that area. So we've got a question in now from Spicebox. If compostable packaging ends up in landfill, does it release methane? And if so, do these emissions outweigh the carbon saved during production? I've got a few thoughts on that as well, Tony, but do you want to go first?
Yeah, look, great, really, really good question. It will, unfortunately, like any food or anything that would break down will release some form of methane. And unfortunately, it won't really break down. Landfills are starved of oxygen, so anything in there, tends to sit there for a very long time. What are your thoughts on that, Bruce?
So I think, landfill's the least desirable option for any sort of form of disposal, and it's sort of back to a landfill site is like a massive compost heap, but with everything chucked in, including literally the kitchen sink. And typically, there's been some studies where they've dug up banana skins that have been in landfill sites for 35 years, and they've barely degraded at all. So they're wet, cold, and dark places, and just not good environments for breaking anything down. So the chances are the material would reside in a landfill site and not break down. Therefore, it wouldn't release neither methane nor carbon. It would just sit there. If it's incinerated, which nearly all waste in London now is incinerated, and we're moving towards incineration as a last resort rather than landfill in the UK, compostables are great because they burn, they give off heat, and they don't leave any residue whatsoever, and there's no toxins coming from that. And obviously it's a carbon neutral fuel because it's grown from plants in the first place. Obviously better to compost it or recycle it, and I'll come back to that in a second. But incineration is a better option, and we really need to be choosing waste management and recycling companies who aren't using landfill, and then at least if it's incinerated, it's going to have a lower carbon impact, although not ideal. So what we're trying to do is keep things in the circular economy. The other issue on this as well is that PLA is a relatively early, and we should move on and talk about other materials as well, but PLA is a relatively early polymer. And there are companies now who are recycling. There's one called Galactica in Belgium who are recycling PLAs, and they're doing chemical recycling, breaking it down into monomers, and then that can be used to make new PLA packaging. So again, in the same way that PET and traditional hydrocarbon plastic recycling is evolved quite significantly further to go, we can also get situations now where we can recycle PLA back into PLA in a closed economy, and we know the need to incinerate it or compost it. We can actually make it into more compostable packaging. And of course, we started by talking about the coffee cup, the fibre, which is certified from a sustainable source in the case of decent packaging. That fibre is super good quality fibre, and that can be recovered and recycled back into board and paper products as well. So we should also look at recycling as well as composting. So hopefully that answered your question at Spicebox. Let's see what else we've got here. Pretty simple one, I think, for you, Tony. Are your products certified home compostable?
So some of our ranges, yes. So we have a takeaway range that is clamshells, burger clamshells, trays, salad trays, and that is made from bagasse and is certified home compostable. So it's a natural brown color. We don't use any bleach, and that makes it home compostable.
Perfect, excellent. And what's bagasse?
Bagasse is the waste that you're left with after producing sugar. So you press sugar and you get the juice, and then you're normally left with that grassy material, and we turn that into a mulch and then use that for packaging.
Brilliant, excellent. We're getting some good feedback here. That's amazing. We've been given here from the Circular Economy Club London, which is great. This is sort of slightly off piece, but I like going off piece as well. So how can you spot or call out a company that is greenwashing and claiming things that are environmentally friendly that aren't environmentally friendly? I'll give you a chance to think about that one, Tony. My initial thought on that is, if you think that's the case, you can, if they're a listed company, you can read their report and form your own view. They all have to file a CSR or ESG report if they're listed. You can read their brochures, you can form a view, but if you really think they are greenwashing, don't spend any money with them. Use the power of the pound and divert your spend somewhere else if you think businesses are greenwashing. And if you want to call them out, hit social media and start to talk about them and question and really drill down into their green credentials if you think they're dubious. Anything to add to that, Tony?
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. You know, where you spend your money is one of the most powerful things you can do. So, you know, use that. It's every time you buy something, that's your way of voting. Yeah, look, if you are questioning it, then trust your gut, right? Yeah, if it doesn't feel right, you're probably right.
Yeah, perfect. So we've sort of, we normally do this for 20 minutes, so it's Compostable is clear. We're definitely going to return to that subject and do some more. So clearly lots of questions around this. So I'm going to do a few more things and then wrap up. So if anyone has any burning questions, hit them to me now. So my first question is, if you could change anything, and if you were basically going to take you're allowed one compostable product and you could switch the entire world to it overnight, what would it be and why? Obviously it'll be decent packaging, but which one of your products?
Which one of our products? Look, I would probably use one of the materials to create something that is a little bit harder to currently make as compostable, if that makes any sense. You know, our industry is always evolving, And while we sell a lot of coffee cups right now, I don't know if that will be the case in 5 or 10 years time. And we'll continue to innovate with whether it's materials or new products. And so there's so many products out there that are still so wasteful. And I would like to see us using more of our materials to innovate in different areas.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's such an early stage part of the supply chain, and the sort of entrenched positions, people who make traditional polymers and traditional packaging items who say it's never going to work. There's challenges with composting, there's challenges in the waste supply chain, there are challenges there, but it's early stage, and we just need to keep promoting compostables, make it work and make it happen, because it's a really great story and a great way of improving the planet. We're going to do one last question from Hannah Chester. If you own clothing made from polyester, how can I avoid releasing microplastic into the water system during washing? Wow, sorry, I thought it was going to be compostable polyester. Hannah, we're going to do that next week. We're going to do a special next week or coming up on microplastics. So you're going to have your own Insta Live, Hannah. And if you're an expert, get in touch and you can be the guest. Tony, any closing remarks? Anything you want to say? Any messages to send out there to all of our viewers?
Yeah, look, I know we're talking compostable packaging here, but it's a challenging time for all, and just to stay strong and hunker down. And if there's anything that we can do to help hospitality in any way, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We're here to help people and work together. We will get through this. It's just going to take a little bit more time.
Perfect. And a final closing remark from me is, if anyone's, Tony talked about where to return compostables. If you don't have home composting, you can take them to a cafe if they're open at the moment. If they're participating, check out your food waste recycling service from your council. But also go over and check out First Mile's website, recyclebox.co.uk. You can send us your compostables. We'll get them recycled. So you can post them to us. Check it out, recyclebox.co.uk. With that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks everyone for viewing. Great questions today. It was a great live. Tony, thanks a million for coming on. Good luck with everything, and we'll speak very soon. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
No trouble. Cheers. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.